Have you ever noticed that whenever people talk about Madrid in August, they all seem to say the same thing? Don't come. It's too hot. The city's closed. Everyone leaves. And while technically there's a little bit of truth to all those things, they're also incredibly misleading. Because I actually live here. I moved back to Madrid after living in the United States for 18 years. And this is now my first full summer experiencing August as a local again, instead of just as someone coming home for vacation. So today I want to share the things nobody really tells you before you visit Madrid in August. Not the obvious tourist advice you can find on every travel website, but the things you only really notice when you actually live here. Some of these things surprised me. Some reminded me why I love this city. And one of them completely changed the way I think about August in Madrid. So let's get started. Number 10, Madrid isn't actually closed. Let's address the biggest myth first. If you spent any time researching Madrid in August, you've probably read something like this. Everything closes. That's simply not true. What actually happens is that Madrid becomes two different cities. If you're staying in the historic center, places like Sol, Gran Via, or Plaza Mayor, you probably think everything is normal. Museums are open, major attractions are open, department stores are open, hotels, of course, are open. Most restaurants that cater to tourists are still operating. If that's your only experience, you wonder why everyone keeps saying the city shuts down. But then you walk into a residential neighborhood like the one I live in. And suddenly, half the cafes have handwritten signs saying they'll reopen in September. Your favorite bakery? Closed. The family-run restaurant you love? Closed. The dry cleaner? Of course. Closed. The neighborhood bar where everyone knows each other? Also closed. The difference is that the places serving locals often take their annual holiday in August. Honestly, I love that. In many countries, it feels impossible for small business owners to ever disconnect. Here, people still prioritize taking time off with their families, as they should. It's a reminder that work isn't supposed to consume your entire life. Number 9, the mornings are absolutely magical. People only talk about how hot Madrid gets. And yes, they're right. By mid-afternoon, you'll understand exactly why people disappear indoors. But almost nobody talks about the mornings. If you wake up early, you get to experience a completely different city. 7 or 8 in the morning, the streets are quiet. The air is still comfortable. You see people walking their dogs. Someone is opening the neighborhood cafe. The smell of fresh bread drifts out of the bakery. People are sitting outside with a coffee instead of rushing somewhere. It's peaceful. One of my favorite things to do is simply walk. No destination, no agenda. Just wandering through streets I've walked hundreds of times before. Madrid has this incredible ability to slow you down in the morning. Before the heat arrives, before the tourists fill the plazas, before the city switches into survival mode. Try it out. Those first couple of hours might actually become your favorite part of the day. Number 8, the heat isn't what surprises people. It's how everyone adapts to it. If you're visiting from somewhere like Northern Europe, Canada, or even parts of the United States, you might think, it's over 40 degrees. How does anyone live here? And of course, the answer is, nobody tries to fight the heat. Locals have been doing this for generations. You don't see people jogging at 3 in the afternoon. You don't see children playing in full sun. You don't see packed terraces at 4 o'clock. Instead, the rhythm of the city changes. People go out early, and then they disappear. Shops get quieter. Streets become almost empty. If you've never experienced it before, it's honestly a little eerie. The first time I walked through my neighborhood in the middle of the afternoon, I remember thinking, where is everybody? Felt like the city had been evacuated. And then, around 9 o'clock, everything came back to life. Restaurants filled up, families appeared, kids started playing in the parks. People were walking dogs again. Couples were out for evening strolls. Terraces suddenly have waiting lists. It's almost like Madrid changes shifts. The city simply decides that nighttime is a much better time to live. Once you stop trying to follow the schedule you're used to back home and instead follow the rhythm of Madrid, everything makes so much more sense. You stop planning sightseeing at 3 in the afternoon. You start carrying a water bottle everywhere. You learn to walk on the sidewalk on the shade side. You appreciate air-conditioned museums. You discover that dinner at 10 o'clock actually feels perfectly normal somehow. And before long, you realize something funny. You haven't really changed Madrid. Madrid has changed you. And honestly, I think that's one of the best things about living here. Number 7, the city feels empty, but not in the way you think. One of the first things people notice when they come to Madrid in August is that the city feels different. And honestly, empty is probably the word you'll hear the most. But I think that word gives you the wrong impression because Madrid is not abandoned. It doesn't feel like a ghost town. It feels like the city has taken a deep breath. There's less rushing, less traffic, less noise. The whole pace slows down. After living in a city like Madrid, where there's always something happening, that change is actually pretty noticeable. When I first moved back here after 18 years living in the United States, one of the things I loved about Madrid was the energy. There's always movement. People walking everywhere. Children playing in plazas. Friends meeting for coffee. Neighbors chatting in the street. The city feels alive. But August gives you a different version of Madrid. It's like seeing a person you know well when they're completely relaxed. The city without the pressure, without the rush, without everyone trying to be everywhere at once. And I think that's something visitors don't expect. They come thinking, nobody will be here. But what they actually discover is that the people who are here are enjoying Madrid in a completely different way. The locals who stayed behind, the people who aren't traveling, the restaurant owners who are still open, neighbors who sit outside every single evening. They have reclaimed the city. And that is something really special. Number 6. Madrid is a city of 2 completely different schedules. If you're used to a Northern European or American schedule, August in Madrid might feel confusing because the city operates on a completely different rhythm. The first half of the day belongs to practical things. Morning walks, errands, coffee, shopping, exploring. Then comes the middle of the day, and that's when Madrid says, nope, not right now. The afternoon heat changes everything. This is when you understand why Spanish culture has always included the idea of slowing down during the hottest hours. Now, I know people often talk about siesta, and there is a stereotype of that everyone in Spain goes home and sleeps for 3 hours every afternoon. That's not really how modern Madrid works. But the idea behind it? Absolutely. The idea that you don't have to force yourself through the hottest, most uncomfortable part of the day. That you can slow down. That you can rest. That you can wait until the evening when life becomes enjoyable again. That part is very real. One thing I love about Madrid is that people don't apologize for having a life outside of productivity. There's still a value placed on enjoying your surroundings. Having a conversation. Sitting on a terrace, walking through a park, spending time with family and friends. And August really highlights that. Number 5, the Real Madrid starts after sunset. This is probably my favorite thing about Madrid in August. The evenings. Because if you only experience Madrid during the hottest part of the day, you might leave thinking, I don't understand why everyone loves this city. If you experience Madrid at night, you get it. Around sunset, something totally changes. The temperature finally drops. The streets start filling up again. The terraces become very busy. People come out with their families. Kids are playing in the plazas. Older couples are taking their evening walks. Friends are meeting for drinks. And suddenly the city feels completely different from what you saw a few hours earlier. One of my favorite things about Spanish culture is how much life happens outdoors. People don't just go from their home to their car, to their office, to their house. Life spills over into the streets. The plaza becomes the living room. The terrace becomes the meeting happening place. The park becomes where families spend their evenings. And in August, this becomes much more obvious. Because nobody wants to sit inside when the sun finally goes down and Madrid becomes beautiful. You will see people having dinner at 10 p.m. And yes, if you're visiting from somewhere where dinner is at 6 p.m., this might feel crazy at first. But then you try it. And suddenly, it just makes sense. Because you're not eating late because you forgot to eat. You're eating late because the day is finally becoming enjoyable again. You're sitting outside, you're talking, you're watching the city, you're not rushing. And honestly, after living here, I understand why. There's something wonderful about a city that says, the day doesn't end when work ends. The day actually starts when people have time to enjoy it. And that is something I think many visitors miss about Madrid. They come with their normal schedule. They wake up early. They do all their sightseeing. They eat dinner at their usual time. They go back to the hotel exhausted. And they miss the Madrid that locals know. The Madrid that appears after dark. The Madrid of conversations that last hours. The Madrid of walking without a destination. The Madrid of sitting outside and realizing you have nowhere else you need to be. And that might actually be the biggest surprise of all. Madrid in August isn't about seeing everything. It's about experiencing the rhythm of the city. Number 4, some of the best places to be are actually indoors. Now, I know that sounds like a strange thing to say in a travel video. After all, you don't fly all the way to Madrid to spend your vacation inside. But hear me out. One of the biggest mistakes I see tourists make is trying to sightsee exactly the way they would in London, Paris, or New York. They leave the hotel after breakfast, they walk all day, then they try to tick off every attraction on their list. By 2 o'clock in the afternoon, they're exhausted, sunburned, carrying a bottle of warm water, and wondering why they're not having as much fun as they expected. Madrid in August rewards people who slow down. Instead of fighting the heat, work with it. Spend your mornings outside. Grab a coffee on a terrace. Walk through the streets while they're still quiet. Visit a market. Take your photos early before the light becomes too harsh and before the crowds arrive. Then, when the temperature starts climbing, that's your cue to head indoors. This is the perfect time to visit one of Madrid's incredible museums. The Prado, the Reina Sofia, the Thyssen. Even if you're not someone who usually spends hours looking at paintings, these places are worth visiting. Not just because they're world-class museums, but because they let you experience another side of Madrid. They're calm, they're cool, they're quiet. And after spending the morning outside, they feel like a little oasis. When I moved back to Madrid, I realized something I'd never appreciated before. Living here means you don't have to rush. You don't have to see everything in one day. You can spend an hour wandering through a museum, leave for lunch, and come back another day. The mindset changes everything. Number 3, August is one of the easiest months to explore the city. Now, this one surprises almost everyone. People assume August is the worst time to visit Madrid. But in some ways, it's actually one of the easiest. Think about it. The metro is a little less crowded. Sidewalks are easier to navigate. There are fewer people commuting. You'll spend less time waiting to cross busy streets. And finding a table at some restaurants becomes easier than during the spring or fall. As someone who lives here, I notice these little things. Doing errands is quicker. Walking through the center feels less stressful. There are moments when I look down Gran Via and I think, I've never seen it this relaxed. Now, don't get me wrong. The major tourist attractions are still busy. You're not going to have the Prado all to yourself. That just doesn't happen. But outside of those hotspots, Madrid feels more spacious. And that's something I really appreciate. One thing I learned since moving back is that this city reveals itself when you stop rushing. Some of my favorite afternoons have involved absolutely no plan. I'll head out with the idea of buying one thing, and 2 hours later, I've wandered through streets I've forgotten existed, discovered a tiny bakery I've never noticed before, or ended up sitting in a shady plaza watching life go by. Those are the moments I remember. Not the checklist, not the itinerary, just living in the city. And August somehow makes those moments easier to find. Number 2, August is festival season, and most tourists don't even know it. This was something I had completely forgotten until I moved back. If you only stay around the main tourist attractions, you could easily miss one of the best parts of August. Madrid celebrates a series of traditional neighborhood festivals, or verbenas, that have been part of city's culture for generations, hundreds of years. You'll suddenly walk down a street and see colorful lights hanging overhead, music playing, people dancing on the street, families sitting outside together. I'm talking 3 generations. Food stalls, children running around, and you'll think, wait, where did this come from? These are massive international festivals designed for tourists. They're neighborhood celebrations, the kind where grandparents, teenagers, young families, and visitors all end up sharing the same space. One evening, you might hear a live band playing traditional music. The next, there's a DJ. Someone's dancing. Someone else is eating a bocadillo. Kids are chasing each other through the square. It's wonderfully unpretentious. That's what I love about it. One of the things I appreciate most about Madrid is that it hasn't lost all these neighborhood traditions. Even in a modern European capital, there are still moments where that community comes together simply because it's summer. No fancy expensive tickets, no VIP areas, no elaborate planning, just people enjoying being outside together. As someone who lived abroad for nearly 2 decades, that's one of the things I've come to appreciate the most since returning. Life here isn't just about monuments or museums. It's about community, about people actually using public spaces, about seeing entire neighborhoods come alive after the sun goes down. Those are the memories that will stay with you. Not because they're spectacular, but because they're real. And that brings me to the number 1 thing that nobody tells you about Madrid in August. In my opinion, it's the thing that completely changes the way you'll experience this city. Also the reason why, despite the heat, despite some shops closing, and despite everyone warning you not to come, August has quietly become one of my favorite months to live in Madrid. Number 1, August is when Madrid feels the most Madrid. If you've made it this far, you might be thinking something. Okay, Susie, you've convinced me that August isn't as bad as everyone, but I actually want to go one step further. I think August is one of the most interesting times of the year to experience Madrid. Not because it's the prettiest. Not because the weather is perfect, because it's also not. It's because this is when you stop seeing Madrid as a tourist destination and start seeing it as a place where people actually live. When I first moved back, after spending 18 years in the United States, I had this idea that I knew Madrid. After all, I grew up here. This was home. But cities change, and so do we. Coming back as an adult has been a completely different experience. When you're young, you don't pay attention to how a city breathes. You don't notice why people disappear in the afternoon. You don't appreciate sitting on a terrace with nowhere to be. But why dinner starts so late? You just accept it. And then you leave. Years living somewhere with a completely different rhythm. Maybe you eat dinner at 6. Maybe stores stay open all day. Everyone spends more time indoors than outside. Without realizing it, those habits become your normal. When I moved back, I had to readjust. And August was one of the months that reminded me most that Madrid has its own rhythm. The city doesn't ask you to speed up, it asks you to slow down. Instead of trying to fit more into the day, you enjoy the part of the day that's actually enjoyable. Instead of rushing from attraction to attraction, you sit down. You have another cup of coffee. You people watch. You wander without looking at Google Maps every 5 minutes. One of the biggest lessons I've learned since moving back is that some of my favorite memories haven't come from doing anything extraordinary. They've come from ordinary moments. Walking home after sunset. Hearing music coming from a neighborhood square. Watching grandparents sit on benches while children run around playing. Stopping for an ice cream because it's simply too hot not to. Finding a quiet street I've somehow never walked on before. Those are the moments that makes me smile. And I think that's what so many travel guides miss. They tell you what to see. They tell you where to eat. They tell you which museum has the shortest line. But they don't tell you how Madrid feels. And feelings are often what we remember long after we've forgotten the itinerary. If you're coming here expecting a perfect, air-conditioned, carefully planned vacation, August might frustrate you. But if you come with a little flexibility, if you're willing to wake up early, take a break in the afternoon, stay out late, and embrace the city's rhythm instead of fighting it, you might end up falling in love with Madrid in a way you never expected. I know I have. And maybe that's the biggest surprise of all. Because if you had asked me a few years ago what my favorite month in Madrid would be, I probably wouldn't have said August. Now, I'm simply not so sure. There's something special about seeing the city take a deep breath. Something special about quieter streets. About evenings that seem to last forever. About realizing that life doesn't always have to move at full speed. Maybe that's one of the reasons I wanted to move back in the first place. Not because Madrid is perfect. Every city has its problems. But because there's a quality of life here that's difficult to explain until you've experienced it yourself. It's found in the conversations that happen over long dinner, in the evening walks with no destination, plazas filled with families, instead of people staring at their phones. In the understanding that productivity isn't the only measure of a good day. And August puts all of that on full display. So, would I recommend visiting Madrid in August? Yes, but with one condition. Don't come expecting the Madrid you've seen in postcards. Come expecting the Madrid that locals know. The one that wakes up early, sleeps through the hottest part of the day, comes alive after sunset, and reminds you that sometimes the best travel experiences aren't about seeing more. They're about slowing down enough to actually experience the place you're in. Thank you so much for spending part of your day with me. If you enjoyed this video and would like to see more about what it's really like living in Madrid, not just the tourist highlights, but the everyday experiences, hidden corners, weekend adventures, and the little things that make this city so special, I'd love to have you subscribe to the channel. And now I want to hear from you. Have you ever visited Madrid in August? Did it surprise you? Or after watching this video, would you actually consider coming during what's probably the most misunderstood month of this year? Let me know down in the comments, because I read every single one and I always love hearing about your experiences and your questions. Next time, live fearlessly, guys.